I rolled out of bed with a pounding headache. Once in the restroom, I hastily consumed 2 aspirins. My stomach felt like it was about to revolt. So I stayed near the bathroom for about 10 minutes. During that time, everything returned to me. My name is Ron Jameson. And when I arrived home from work yesterday, my beautiful wife Chrissy caught me off guard. She began by saying she loved me. But then she admitted that she had been seeing another man for the past year and had fallen in love with him as well. She regarded it as merely an act of compassion. The man she couldn't recognize had survived a horrific vehicle accident that killed his wife while he fled unharmed. He was overcome with shame about this. Chrissy revealed that she first tried to assist them cope with his emotional distress, and they fell in love in the process. Indeed, she admitted that they had been intimate. And Chrissy even admitted that the familiarity was sometimes quite pleasurable. Throughout this unsettling debate, she insisted that she loved me and would soon return to me. But as long as this man needed her, she would be there for him. She promised me that she would be there for both her kids and me. The man was much younger than her, and she knew he would soon move on. However, she wanted to be there for him for as long as he needed her. This was about the worst-case scenario a husband might face. Shocked, I reacted like many men would. I accused my wife of being unfaithful and angrily reprimanded her. Chrissy then conveyed her unhappiness with my reaction. He even had the audacity to suggest that if I genuinely loved her, I would accept the circumstances. She reminded me that in our wedding vows, I promised to love, respect, and cherish her. Chrissy was clearly disturbed and angry with me. I was very irritated. To avoid physical conflict, I started drinking and shouting. When I had calmed down significantly, I wondered how she would react if I started seeing another lady. Chrissy reacted by asking who would be interested in me, portraying me as an overweight, middle-aged man with thin hair. She also told me that if I tried to divorce her, she would make my life unpleasant. I was outraged and unsure what to do next. My mind was swamped, and I couldn't think clearly. In a less than ideal time, I continued to drink, inventing my frustration with Chrissy. She packed a bag and announced that she would stay with her lover until I could calm down and accept the situation. I can't recall much after that. I sat on her bed. I recognized Chrissy was correct about my appearance. I was indeed middle-aged. My hair was thinning, and I was carrying around 20 pounds more than I should. I couldn't change my age, but I could deal with my hair and weight issues. However, before taking any action, I needed to know where my children were. It was Saturday morning, and they should have been at home. A short search around the house revealed that they were not present. I'm not sure where Chrissy may have taken them. I was ready to contact her parents when I heard a car in the driveway. Staring out the window, I observed Chrissy's car with her children getting out and heading towards the house. I confronted Chrissy at the front entrance. "Good. I noticed you aren't inebriated," she commented angrily. "Where were the children?" I inquired equally bluntly. "They were with me, leaving them with you was not an option," she responded. "You did not take them to your lover's home, did you?" I snapped at Ron. She responded. "Mind your language. They were already present. My friend is a very kind person. You on the other hand were horrific yesterday. I would not have dared to leave them with you." "Fair enough for me," I conceded. "But why didn't you take the kids to your parents' home?" Chrissy walked by me and up the stairs, saying they weren't home. I followed her to our bedroom. Are you here to stay or are you going to return? To your partner, I asked. Please, Ron, stop being so immature, she responded. I've described how events will unfold. I have no desire to continue debating this with you. The debate has come to an end. Accept it or not. That is your option. Even though you are acting badly, I still care for you. And as previously stated, when he no longer demands my presence, I will return permanently. So what's the next step? I'm having difficulty maintaining my composure right now. I'm going to get a few stuff since I intend to spend some time with my friend. Until you're ready to deal with the situation. And the children. I hope this persuades her to stay. It did not. If you are hesitant to look after them, please contact my parents. I am convinced they will. Chrissy then packed an additional suitcase of clothes and left. At the time, I felt like my head was about to explode. But I knew I had to remain calm for the sake of our children. However, I had no intention of quietly accepting Chris's betrayal. No guy of respect would. After Chrissy left, I checked on the kids and asked whether they had any schoolwork. All three confirmed that they did. I asked them to start working on it right away. The objections stopped when I suggested that when they finished, we'd go visit Pop at Grammy's house. They were thrilled. They enjoyed visiting since Pop was assisting all of my children in building go-karts. They had intermittently devoted months to this project. The go-karts must have been nearing completion. Chrissy's parents, Sam and Mary, lived on a humble farm about a 15-minute drive away. Both were retired. Sam particularly enjoyed tinkering, which led to minor construction and repair projects in his large workshop. Whenever possible, the go-kart assembly took place here. As a trained mechanic at the local Ford dealership, the largest in the Tri-County area, I made infrequent contributions. I considered sharing Chrissy's paramour with her parents, hoping for both knowledge and advice. Because my parents lived in another state, I had a close bond with Sam and Mary, and considered them nearly second parents. Nonetheless, I hesitated, fearing that they might side with Chrissy, potentially jeopardizing our relationship. I went to each room to make sure. The kids were working on their schoolwork and they were. It dawned on me how much I valued my children. Ron, the eldest at 16, was known lovingly as Ron. Ron's family separated him from me, an aspiring player. His size was the only impediment to college scholarships. Sally, a one-year junior, exemplifies the rebellious teenager, while excelling academically. Kyle, the youngest of the 11 children, despised the nickname the baby, which Chrissy often used fondly. Yet his unexpected presence had brought our family great delight. While the kids were upstairs, I brewed some coffee and started making a list of tasks. Uncertainty about the time available. The first step was to notify my employer, Bobby Clarkson, of the problem. As I had worked with the dealership from its beginning 23 years ago, and had been under Bob's supervision for 15 years, I thought myself one of the best mechanics there. Bob, empathic as a result of his son's recent difficult divorce, listened carefully. During their disagreement, his son's ex-partner leveled serious accusations. "Damn it," I explained. "That's quite the accusation." Bob replied, his voice full of bitterness. The ordeal had been tremendously stressful for a while. We expected the authorities to grab Gary at any minute. These are the types of charges that are devastating and nearly unprovable. And law enforcement becomes concerned whenever a woman accuses a male. Bob said that his previous mother-in-law was the one who saved Gary. Carol informed her mother that Gary had abused her grandchild. And I guess she felt it would be the final blow against Gary. Bevy is notorious for his cruelty. But I didn't understand she had a strong sense of justice. She immediately removed her granddaughter from preschool and took her to see her family doctor. Beth had the physician evaluate her granddaughter to determine whether she had been molested. The doctor specifically emphasized that there was no proof of her granddaughter being harmed. Armed with this evidence, Bev went to the police station and told them that if they charged Gary, she would testify against her daughter. Then Bev advised Carol that if she maintained her actions, she would disclose her drug problem and lose custody of her kid. God bless, Bevy, I said, shocked by the extent women will go to achieve their desires. Amen to Bob's response. So Ron, if there is anything I can do to help you, please let me know. I will make it happen. After accumulating 12 personal days and 6 weeks of vacation, I requested the following week off. Bob agreed without hesitation, and even offered to arrange for me to use all of my personal and vacation time consecutively. As it turned out, I did exactly that. In addition, I needed help with something else. I needed the contact information for a reputable divorce attorney. That's simple, Bob said. Hire the lawyer my son hired. He comprehensively defeated Carol in court. Gary was awarded primary custody of their child, who was allowed to stay in the residence, and Carol was required to pay child support. His name is Dwight Tucker. I think I still have his contact information here. The more acrimonious my son's divorce became, the more we relied on attorneys, and Dwight Tucker's name became a staple in our chats. Bob spent about a minute searching before he located Dwight Tucker's business card. I phoned the lawyer's office, not expecting an answer on a Saturday, and prepared to leave a message. However, luck was on my side, because not only was Mr. Tucker available, but his secretary also informed me that he had a recent cancellation and could see me if I arrived at the office within 30 minutes. I informed the children I'd be out for a short while and asked them to behave. Then I drove to Mr. Tucker's office, arriving in 20 minutes. Dwight Tucker seemed to be in his early to mid-30s. A handsome man slightly shorter than myself, with deep blue eyes and a warm smile. I was convinced that Dwight made a positive impression on the jury. What can I assist you with today? Dwight inquired after I had seated myself. I revealed that my wife had confessed the previous day that she was having an affair with a younger man, which caused me considerable embarrassment and anger. I detailed the events of the previous day as succinctly as possible, while Dwight took notes, shaking his head. When I shared that my wife professed to still love me, but intended to continue her affair with the other man, he interjected, "Let me understand this correctly." His expression, turning serious. "Your wife claims she loves you, but will continue her affair with this individual." My cheeks turned bright red with embarrassment. I simply nodded, signaling him to continue. Dwight urged me to proceed. I recounted how Chrissy had become furious with me for not supporting her scheme. I confessed that I had insulted her with harsh words, which hurt her deeply. I shared that Chrissy had mockingly questioned how she would feel if I started seeing another woman. It was deeply humiliating and painful to reveal how Chrissy had diminished my worth as a man, claiming I would never find a woman who would desire me. Moreover, she threatened to destroy me if I attempted to leave her. "She really said all that to you?" Dwight inquired, his tone reflecting sheer disbelief. "No offense, Mr. Fremont, but your wife is either incredibly heartless Or she's dealing with significant psychological issues. None taken. I had failed, I agree. I then detailed how she had left her children at her lover's home the previous day during her dispute. And they had stayed overnight. Dwight looked momentarily surprised. Then smiled slightly before jotting something down. Now the crucial question. What do you wish to do? Dwight asked, looking up with his fingers. And pretended in thought. I paused to consider, then responded. I cannot tolerate the current circumstances. I'm unsure if I can move beyond this. But I certainly do not wish to be ruined in a divorce and will lose my children. Dwight nodded empathetically. It appears to be a common strategy among women contemplating divorce due to their misdeeds. However, rest assured, I'll work diligently to minimize any harm she might cause. Should you divorce, you retain at least half of your shared assets. He warned me that the court doesn't concern itself with affairs, implying I would still have to provide alimony and child support. I understand, I replied, feeling somewhat discouraged. Despite Dwight's reassurances, it seemed I was headed for a financial loss. Yes, that's a risk, but it's exactly why we must act decisively now. Dwight advised, poring over his notes. Currently your wife has vacated the family home and worse. She left your children with her lover unattended. That's severely frowned upon by certain judges. You have custody of your children now. And I believe we can maintain that. I'll seek an emergency order to prevent your wife from returning, securing your position in the home temporarily, which strengthens your case for primary custody. If successful, you may avoid child support payments. He then inquired if my wife was employed. Yes, part-time at the hospital, I replied, explaining her schedule and speculating on how she met her current partner. Dwight concurred and inquired about her earnings. I noted she made around $25,000 annually, while I earned about $80,000. Dwight then asked the pivotal question, looking me in the eye. Do you still have feelings for her? Are you interested in reconciliation? I looked down for a long while. Upon raising my hand, tears were flowing. I nodded, but added, I do love her. But I cannot accept things as they are. She has disrespected me and broken her vows. I'm ready to end our marriage, finally. Dwight flipped his notepad to a fresh page, asking about our financial assets. I took a moment to calculate. Then detailed our financial situation. Approximately $3,500 in checking, $44,000 in savings. A $220,000 certificate of deposit. With interest in my $4,000 and $1,000 with $150,000. Chrissy had a smaller retirement fund from her tenure at the hospital. Despite her shorter employment duration, I clarified that the hospital's compensation package was typically more advantageous than my own. Yet to my astonishment, my employer provided a superior healthcare scheme. So we opted for that for our family. After a brief reflection, I also brought up that we owned 2 vehicles, titled in both our names. We certainly honor home. But we had only purchased the specific home a few years back and had fully utilized the mortgage, leaving little to no equity in it. Okay, here's what I need you to do, Dwight said, looking determined, as if you were about to enter the fray. The first step is for you to withdraw half of the funds from your savings, checking in the certificate of deposit CD. Then transfer those funds into a new account under your name alone. I can't manage the CD since it's jointly owned. I mentioned I can't withdraw from it without Chrissy's signature, no issue. Dwight replied as he started to calculate figures. On his calculator. Withdraw $33,750 from the savings account. And then utilize the checking account to settle as many household bills as possible. And pay off any shared credit cards you possess, clearing their balances using the joint checking account. Then secure a credit card solely in your name. I already possess a credit card acquired before marriage, I stated. But I rarely use it because our joint card rewards us with cash back, even better. Dwight beamed. He promptly noted down the list of actions and handed it to me immediately. I want you to have my secretary contact Taylor Locksmith for you. Provide them with your address and instruct them to alter all the locks at your residence. Afterward, return here, and I'll brief you on our subsequent steps. Miss Carlson quickly got Taylor Locksmith on the line, and upon giving them the address, they confirmed their arrival by noon. I then returned to Dwight Tucker's office. Dwight had just finished a call as I took a seat. We're fortunate, he shared. According to the clerk, if I submit my documents today, will be assigned Judge Johnson. Why is that fortunate? I inquired, puzzled. He loads adulterers, Dwight said with a grin. He's a traditionalist from the Bible Belt, and detests spouses who are unfaithful. Believe me, this is greatly to our advantage. Had he not been available, I might have had to exert a bit more effort. But I'm confident we would have achieved our objectives nonetheless. Judge Johnson was a close friend of my father. I'm certain you won't be upset if I contact him at home. Dwight then stood, offering me a handshake, which I accepted appreciatively. Before you head home, Dwight instructed, ensure you've taken care of your banking tasks. I'm preparing a petition for an emergency restraining order against your wife. She will not be allowed near your home, within 500 feet of you or your children. She's currently residing with her paramour, having left your children in his care. This will significantly support our case for the restraining order. Although it may be dismissed weeks or months later, by then you should be solidly established in the family residence as the primary caregiver. By Friday, your wife will be served with the divorce papers, and then we'll wait to see her next moves. For the first time since Chrissy had dropped her shocking news, I felt like I was reclaiming control of my life and some of my self-respect. The bank wasn't too crowded, allowing me to quickly obtain a cashier's check for my portion of the funds and close our shared credit card. They informed me of a remaining balance of $537, which I settled using the checking account. Then I advanced the mortgage payments by 2 months, consuming another $2,600 with barely anything left in the checking account. Cashier's check in hand, I proceeded to another bank down the road and opened both a checking and savings account solely in my name. After completing these errands, I returned home. Upon arrival, I found the children engrossed in television, so I gathered them into the car. As we approached my in-laws, I saw Sam emerge from around the corner of his house, coming from his workshop. He waved and returned around the house. The children excitedly exited the car and followed their grandfather inside. Mary welcomed me with a kiss on the cheek. Shortly after, Sam joined us, having cleaned his hands to offer his greetings. I regret to inform you this, but I must say directly I began. It's difficult for me to express, but after gathering my thoughts I continued. Chrissy is involved with someone else, and I've decided to seek a separation. I don't accept that. Sam responded with disbelief. Chrissy doesn't seem like that sort of person. What evidence do you possess? She confessed to me I replied quietly as tears began to stream down my cheeks. Just then, the rear entrance swung open. And the children entered in a group. "Please stay outdoors for a bit," I requested of the young ones. "Why?" Ron inquired. "Because I'm asking you," I replied a bit more sternly than intended at that moment. Ron noticed my tears. And quickly hurried at his siblings back outside. "She confessed?" Mary questioned, unable to believe it. "Yes," I confirmed strongly, and much more. I then detailed the events of the previous night, including when she admitted to being intimate with someone else and enjoying it. Additionally, I shared how she threatened to destroy me if I pursued a divorce, and expressed her belief that no other woman would be interested in me. Everyone was taken aback, and Sam was visibly upset. "I still can't grasp it. I'm going to call her and put it on loudspeaker," he declared after dialing his daughter's number and switching to speaker mode. Sam placed the phone on the table. "Hi, Dad," Chrissy greeted cheerfully. "What up? Ron is here right now," Sam said, then directly asked if she was having an affair. Following a lengthy silence, Chrissy asked, "What did he tell you?" He explained that she was accused of being intimate with another man and having feelings for him. "It's complex, Dad," she tried to explain. "I'm assisting this man. He's faced a terrible ordeal." Sam's face turned crimson as he asked, through clenched teeth, whether they had been intimate. "Yes, but I still hold love for Ron. I can't leave this man right now. I have feelings for him too," she admitted. I was dumbfounded by her admission, especially given her close relationship with her father, Sam, whom I had assumed would defend her actions. Chrissy's voice was choked with emotion. And it was clear Sam never expected his daughter to act in such a manner. "Dad, please," was all we heard before Sam entered the car. Shortly after, the phone rang again, and Mary moved to answer it. Sam ordered, but Mary attempted to pick it up anyway. Sam took the phone from her and hurled it at the fireplace. "I told you to leave it," he yelled at his spouse, who was visibly shaken, and retreated. The room fell into an eerie silence as Sam and Mary processed the revelations. Eventually, Sam approached me, expressing his deep regret. "Ron, I'm profoundly sorry. I'm at a loss for words. I can't believe our daughter would do this to you. We'll do anything we can to support you and the children," he offered. Following this, I had to depart to meet the locksmith, herding the children into my vehicle. Before leaving, I extended an invitation to Sam and Mary to discuss the situation further over dinner. On the journey back, Sally broke down in tears, questioning if a divorce was imminent. "Who told you that?" I demanded. "I did," Ron admitted, revealing he had eavesdropped. Confronted with their right to understand the situation, I pondered how to explain their mother's actions without causing them further distress. Chrissy's thoughtlessness was evidently harming the children, a consequence she likely hadn't considered when she became involved with someone new. Regrettably, I confirmed to them, "It appears your mother and I are heading toward a divorce." "But why?" sobbed Kyle. "Your mother has developed feelings for another person," I explained succinctly. "So she's intimate with another man," Sally interjected, tears in her eyes, labeling her mother harshly. "Sally, don't speak ill of your mother," I cautioned, though, feeling a similar bitterness. Shortly after securing her home with new locks, Chrissy made a sudden appearance, upset over my disclosure to her parents. "I'm confident that you informed them that I'm a 304 and adulteress," Chrissy yelled. "I believe you adored me," I expressed sorrowfully. "Chrissy, I do adore you with my entire heart. But I will never condone you being intimate with another man. And you have no clue how deeply you wounded me. When you described me as just an unattractive, middle-aged man who no other woman would ever desire to accompany. Essentially, you implied you're doing me a kindness by remaining by my side. Your pity affection is something I can manage without. Not only did you do this, but you also threatened to destroy me. Yet you dared to profess your love to me. You really ought to examine yourself closely. Chrissy, people who adore one another don't act in such ways regarding informing your parents. I added. If you're so certain that your actions are justified, then being aware shouldn't be an issue. Chrissy appeared troubled after I laid my charges against her. Okay, I apologize. I didn't intend to utter those words. She attempted to apologize. I was merely upset at the moment. Because you labeled me a 304 an adulteress. Honestly, Ron, to call your spouse and the mother of your kids such names. You vowed to love, honor, and cherish me. Shame on you if you genuinely love me. You embraced the situation. I'm not abandoning you for him. I simply love him too. And I'm attempting to assist him. He's significantly younger than me. And will eventually move on. Chrissy, I stated, shaking my head slowly. If you're going to recite our marriage vows, you should also recall the part where you pledged to forsake all others. And to remind you, a married woman does not engage in sexual relations with young men just because they're emotionally distressed. Furthermore, I have come to terms with the fact that you were not as you seemed. And I'm not going to keep you in my life any longer. As you said, accept it or not, that's your decision. Chrissy turned pale and looking sure, that moment. Then her eyes narrowed and she regained her confidence. She was breathing heavily. And I sensed she was preparing her next rationale for why I should accept the situation at that instant. I wished deeply that I felt no love for her. But my love for her was profound. Look, Ron, Christy spoke in the tone she used with the children when she expected them to listen. Stop acting foolishly, I'm your spouse. You know me, I love you. And I will return to you once this man recovers. I was deeply saddened, but I had reached my limit. My affection for her vanished, now replaced by sheer loathing. No, Chrissy, I don't recognize you. My spouse and the mother of my children was a kind and faithful individual who would never betray me. You are someone I don't recognize. For all I know, this could be just one of numerous affairs you've had over the years. I can't be certain about anything regarding you anymore. Who knows if you were frequently being unfaithful with every injured Tom, Dick and Harry? Chrissy's eyes narrowed, energy flushed. I could tell she was livid at that moment. And on the verge of losing her temper. This is not an affair, but... And this is the only person I've been intimate with since we got married. This man has been deeply wounded. And I'm going to support him whether you approve or not. Suit yourself. I cannot and will not tolerate this. Furthermore, because my trust in you has eroded, I plan to conduct a DNA test on the children. To ascertain if they truly are mine, I declared. Gazing down from the porch at my wife. I shook my head, finding little comfort in the knowledge that she was oblivious to the turmoil that was likely to unfold. I believe she had persuaded herself that she could maintain both relationships without repercussions. At that moment, the sheriff's car arrived. The deputy stepped out of his vehicle and approached Chrissy. Are you Chrissy Jameson? The deputy inquired. Yes, I am, Chrissy replied. Confused, ma'am, this is a restraining order. The deputy handed her the legal document. The text states that you must not enter that house. And you must remain 500 feet away. Do you comprehend that? That's my residence. Chrissy exclaimed, all my belongings are within me. I'll permit you 15 minutes in the residence. To collect your belongings. The deputy glanced at me and I gave a nod. Mr. Jameson will wait out here, officer. I prefer to take my kids to the backyard. If that's acceptable, I requested. But I want to see my kids. Chrissy was in a panic by now. Ma'am, the purpose of the restraining order is to shield specifically your kids from you. Chrissy spun around with fury in her gaze. You did this. You're attempting to take my children from me. No, Chrissy, you brought this on, I stated, supposedly. I merely reported to the court that you had deserted our home and left their offspring alone at your lover's residence, where you were intimate with him. I didn't desert our home. And he is a wonderful man, Chrissy yelled. He's just someone I'm attempting to assist by being intimate with him. If he's so remarkable, why don't you go live with him? Offer him your affection for the remainder of your life. Or does he only wish to exploit you for transient gratification? I countered more for the deputy's sake than for my spouse's. I escorted the kids to the backyard and informed them that their mother was collecting her belongings to bring to her new partner's place, but that I would allow them to see her before she departed. I derived no joy from the encounter between Chrissy and the offspring. She was weeping so intensely. When I brought them back out front, he dashed to his mother's embrace and cried bitterly, pleading with her not to go. Please, Ron, Christy wept. Can't you perceive what you're inflicting on the kids? Anger surged within me, but I subdued it with frost in my tone. I admonished her, don't speak of the kids. I have it wrong, the children. You were the one who brought the kids to your lover's place and compelled them to stay while you indulged with your lover, Ron. Why can't you grasp that? I can't. Forsaken, Chrissy uttered amidst a deluge of tears. Chrissy, I'm convinced you pondered deeply before our awful discussion yesterday. I realize you can't forsake him, so remain with him. You have already forsaken your husband, your kids and your home. It's time we did the same to you. I suppose in all your contemplation, you never envision the repercussions of your choice. Now you're starting to witness those repercussions. I hope you're satisfied. Ron just stood there observing his mother, and then inquired why Christy scrambled to justify her actions to her son. Ron listened, but it was evident he didn't accept any of it. Yet it was Sally who truly confronted her mother. You're nothing but a self-centered enchantress, she declared as she spat in her mother's face. I had to hold my daughter back because I feared she might strike Chrissy. I also insisted she apologized. Sally outright declined. Christy was utterly taken aback and collapsed to the ground, weeping. I wasn't entirely surprised by my daughter's conduct. Sally and Christy had been clashing frequently and seemed to be at odds. Increasingly to me, it appeared to be the typical teenage defiance phase that I hoped Sally would surpass. But now I could only wish that Christy hadn't irreparably harmed her rapport with her daughter as I embraced Sally. Christy rose and dashed to her car as she drove off. I saw her pounding the steering wheel and reach. The youngest tried to run after the car screaming, "Mommy, please don't leave us." Eventually Ron caught him and brought him back. The officer looked at me with a sorrowful expression. "Mr. Jameson, I'm truly sorry for the ordeal you're enduring. That evening Sam and Mary visited us for supper. I had planned to barbecue hamburgers and prepare a salad, but Mary ushered me out of the kitchen and decided to bake a meatloaf in her renowned macaroni and cheese instead. The children adored it while Mary was cooking. Sam and I relaxed in the living room drinking a couple beers. His daughter's behavior clearly caused him great distress. I informed him about the protective order, saying that it was granted because Christy had neglected the children at her boyfriend's home. This revelation aggravated Sam even more. Mary talked with Christy approximately an hour after he left. Sam ultimately asked, "How did it go?" I inquired. "Hopefully, awful," Sam confessed. Mary tried to persuade Christy, but it was pointless. Christy is adamant. She is accurate and we are all misguided. She believes we were bad people. That is when Mary became outraged. I've never seen her that enraged. The conversation ended when Mary told her daughter not to contact us again. Furthermore, Mary informed Christy that if the situation escalated to court, she would testify against her. Understandably, the dining environment was somewhat subdued. The sole moment of joy came when Sam proposed. The next day, the kids came over to work on their go-karts, which made Ron and Kyle happy. Sally just sat there, upset, and did not touch her food. But I decided to disregard it. I sensed she was in as much suffering as the rest of us. Christy received divorce papers at the hospital the following Friday. Friends who worked there reported me that Christy became upset. She lashed out at the server, threatening to ruin me. They eventually sent her to her boyfriend's home. Christy then chose a lawyer, Emma, who was familiar with Dwight and had a poster in court before her, right? And Dwight commented that she wasn't as capable as she thought. Amber quickly attempted to overturn the protection order, but Judge Johnson was unconcerned. He stated that the children were currently safe, and agreed to just slightly amend the order. He allowed Christy to make supervised visits to the house, while prohibiting her boyfriend from going within 500 feet of the property. He warned her against violating this restriction, and threatened to cancel her visitation rights. Christy was thrilled with the adjustment, while I was pleased that it allowed the children to visit their mother. Christy's happiness, however, was short-lived, as the judge also ordered her to begin paying child support, necessitating full-time employment. Despite her outburst at the hospital, I was confident they would hire her full-time, given the current lack of nurses in her sector. The DNA test results arrived following the court hearing. It took me nearly half a day to gather the courage to open the letter. When I read the results, my heart leaped with joy. For the first time since the farce began, I had proof that the children were biologically mine. I reviewed the report several times to guarantee its accuracy. Then I thought about how I would have reacted if the outcomes had been different. In a moment of clarity, I realized that my feelings for them would remain constant regardless of the outcome. I even contemplated whether, for the sake of my children, I could forgive Christy if she simply left that man. Nonetheless, I determined that she could never teach appropriate values in her children. She had a bad effect. Therefore, I needed to keep her away from them. I used up all of my personal days and vacation time, so that I could stay at home with the kids when it ran out. Fortunately, Christy's parents consented to care for them. Sam and Mary continued to avoid communicating with their daughter until she regained consciousness. Sam claimed that she had called 3 or 4 times each day for roughly a week and that he had banned her contact. Christy and I would make the arrangements for visits, and the men who are lawyers would transmit our choices. It was eventually decided that Christy could see the children on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 6 to 7 p.m., with Mary overseeing. However, I insisted on being present for the initial visit. On the first Monday, I hoped Christy and Mary would fully comprehend the guidelines. Christy got out of a car that had stopped on the street. I didn't recognize the car, but I soon assumed it belonged to her friend. Christy approached the home nervously and greeted us with a hesitant smile. "Hello, Ron, how are you?" "Mother, it's wonderful to see you." Christy stated that you must leave. I informed her that the judge had ordered that your boyfriend not be within 500 feet of this residence. Her face flushed with shock. "But he was simply dropping me off." Christy stammered. "Do you have no sense?" I was angry. The judge was explicit. Mitchell's partner informed that jerk to go immediately. "And I will not report to the judge." I insisted. Christy instantly nodded and headed back to the car. Then an idea occurred to me. As Christy spoke with her buddy, I walked out at an angle and pulled a pen from my pocket. I took note of the car's license plate. Then I went back to the porch as the automobile left. "Okay," he claimed, "he will return for me." Christy stated, now challenging. "Well, tell him to wait for you down the road. Because I do not want to see him near this house. I make it apparent that I am angry. Ron, I am absolutely fed up with your actions. You did not need to withdraw monies from her checking account or deactivate my credit card." Christy responded. "Christy, I did not take anything. The cash withdrawn from the checking account were used to pay off the credit card and subsequently 2 mortgage installments. I needed to ensure that the kids had a safe place to stay while we worked out the credit card cancellation difficulties. I didn't want to be responsible for any expenditures you might incur while out with your girlfriend," I explained. Christy's cheeks became pink, likely from fury and pride. "This is not a partnership and he is not my partner, Ron. You are being unreasonable," she insisted. Before I could reply, Mary intervened, striking Christy in the face. I was as astonished as Christy, who recoiled and looked at her mother. "Mother?" Christy was perplexed when she said, "If you ever disrespect Ron again, I will strip you of that dress and spank you," Mary threatened. "Now, if you want to see the children in the living room, I need to talk to Ron first and then I'll join. But be warned, if you misbehave or say anything wrong, I will personally remove you from this property." Christy quietly nodded and entered the house. "Ron, I'm sorry for my careless daughter," Mary said with compassion. "Thank you for your support." I answered with real gratitude. And then I left. The restraining order was lifted 2 weeks after the initial hearing, as Dwight had predicted. By then, I had shown myself as the primary caregiver and was allowed to stay in the house. Christy was still associated with her partner, but she was now allowed to spend unsupervised time with the children in public settings, and her child support payments continued. However, the judge warned her that she couldn't bring them to her partner's house, and he couldn't be with her when she had the children. After 4 months of postponement, our first appearance in court to finalize the divorce arrived before either of our lawyers could speak. Judge Johnson inquired whether Christy or A. had undergone any counseling. The attorneys admitted that none had occurred. Therefore the judge ordered 8 sessions of marriage counseling. Neither Christy nor I opposed the plan for me. I think they were pointless, but I didn't want to anger the judge. On the other hand, I couldn't shake the idea that Christy was still hoping to convince me, or possibly the counselor, that her actions were justified. The first appointment with the counselor in Patterson confirmed my thoughts. Christy spent most of her time seeking to rationalize her conduct as being consistent with Christian ideals. I was certain the therapist would be surprised when Christy began her explanation. Christy's pride, I believe, surprised me the most. And by the second week, the therapist was gently probing Christy's reasoning. She questioned whether Christy would tolerate it if I started dating another woman. I tensed, anticipating an insult to my dignity. But this time, things were different. Christy was hesitant to respond. But by that point, I had lost interest. Throughout the protracted divorce, I made various adjustments. It may appear shallow, but when the lady you like tells you you're inadequate, you're determined to prove her wrong. As a result, I decided to undergo a hair transplantation surgery. It wasn't a large sum, but the cost was roughly $4,000. I contemplated whether or not to go with the hair surgery, unsure if I was prepared for the potential mockery. Still, I was on vacation, so I went ahead. As far as I understand, my hair was chopped short. Then follicles were taken from the back of my head and moved to the front. I spent most of the first week indoors. My youngsters were bewildered and bombarded me with questions. I merely told that it was a minor medical procedure. Around 10 days later, I looked very similar to my previous self, and my hair got longer with each passing week. Once the operation was fully healed, I started a training routine and began running. Initially, I could only run a half-mile before being very weary. But later I could run 10 kilometers. I also registered at a gym. I changed our diet at home to ensure that we all ate healthier. The kids were first hesitant since I eliminated fast food, cookies, ice cream, pizza, and a variety of other harmful foods. Nonetheless, I looked online and found some tasty dishes to try. They were overjoyed when I surprised them with a new and tasty lunch. Some experiments were unsuccessful, but we all laughed. Toss them in and make sandwiches instead. My kids adored helping me in the kitchen. It became into a genuine family pastime. Despite the lingering anguish from Chris's deception, I was beginning to feel more optimistic about myself. In fact, returning to work gave me a considerable confidence boost. I went to the office to verify my schedule with the receptionist. Trudy returned my greeting with a questioning glance. I expected her to comment on my new hairstyle, but she didn't. "Welcome back, Ron," she remarked happily, then examined me. "There's something unique about you." I modestly remarked that I was on a diet and had dropped 18 pounds with the goal of losing even more. She laughed approvingly. "It truly suits you. If I weren't married, I'd absolutely express interest." "Thanks for the compliment." I humorously mentioned my lack of allure to my wife, who had found a lover. Although the joke fell flat by that point, my condition was well known inside the company, and Trudy's expression changed to sympathetic. "Chris is making a mistake, to put it mildly. Ron, you're a terrific person. Many women out there would love to be with you. Do not allow Christy to affect your views." That encouragement was the biggest jolt I had experienced in a long time. Suddenly, I no longer felt like I had failed. I returned to the present moment and asked my spouse another question. "Christy, how would you react if Ron came home and revealed that he was having an affair with another woman?" As I previously stated, I expected Christy to question my ethics, but she didn't. I observed her gazing at me on our first meeting. It seems that she could no longer condemn me for having sparse hair or being overweight. This was yet another boost to my self-esteem. Regardless, I sat in my seat waiting as Christy looked to consider her response. She was in a difficult position to claim that I couldn't be with another lady while she was with another man. I suppose if he was supporting that lady. And moving past some sorrow, she commented angrily. I'd be fine with it. And suppose he admitted his feelings for this woman and said how special their intimate relationship was. I persisted again. I would accept Christie's aid. Nonetheless, he would have to ensure me that the children and I were safe. The discussion went in this manner, with me seeking to demonstrate Christie's ludicrous viewpoint. However, Christie remained tenacious. And these meetings appeared fruitless, serving solely as a stage for Christie to illustrate her case, which was never going to happen. The initial surprise at Christie's conduct was dissipating. Interestingly, love begins to fade, if not fostered after the third week. When the transition happened, Christie entered the meeting softly and spoke just briefly, focusing on listening. This adjustment had taken her back, possibly decreasing her arrogance. As I repeatedly and empathetically questioned her underlying beliefs at every turn, I noticed Chris observing me when she thought I wasn't looking. I continued to exercise, dropping weight, and began working in the garden, which resulted in a visible tan. A few months before the therapy became mandatory, I decided to make another shift. I was growing dissatisfied with my job. True, I enjoyed mending vehicles. Not just the technical side, but also the bodywork. I'd been restoring antique autos since I was a teenager. Now, the idea of starting my own business came as a means to spend more time with my children. After discussing it with Sam, he agreed to back me. My goal was to open my own shop and grow a business. But I couldn't simply leave my job without financial security. We would struggle financially before the business could help us. However, because Sam's property was in an area, he let me start my business in his workshop. Sam's workshop began as a barn that had been adapted for his use. There was plenty of room for both Sam and me, if I could get the business off the ground. Sam agreed to lease me a plot of land down the road to build my facility. I spent time at work observing their setup. The dealership was built to handle a higher volume of work than I had previously undertaken. They did some bodywork on site, but outsourced most of it. Keeping this in mind, I decreased my tool and equipment needs. Certainly, creating a paint booth was necessary. Sam not only approved, but actually helped to build it. To fund this enterprise, I used money from our joint account, as well as a small loan from Sam. I began working part-time, primarily on weekends and evenings. It was entertaining, and the children frequently joined in to observe or provide a help. I truly enjoyed teaching Ron how to complete tasks. Even Sally got involved, eager to tell her pals about how she helped replace an engine or paint a Corvette. This increased her appeal to the lads at school. My business flourished through referrals, and I quickly considered whether I should pursue it full-time. This thought became pressing after I was requested to work over the weekend on certain backup responsibilities. However, I was unable to oblige, because I had my own clientele to attend to. When I told Bob I couldn't work because of personal business responsibilities, I was afraid I'd lose my job. "Have you got a moment, Bob?" I inquired, peering into his office. "Of course, Ron," he said, motioning me in. "It's terrific that you're here for the weekend. We have 44 sold autos arriving this Friday that need to be thoroughly inspected. They must be ready by the end of the month." I was worried when he told me this. Many people are unaware that manufacturers give incentives to dealers who meet particular sales targets during a month, which can result in large savings. For example, selling 300 autos. Might result in a $45,000 discount. This incentive was critical for the dealership. The point is, Bob, I started to sweat. Run down my back. I can't work this weekend. I began a side company on weekends. And have chores to do. Bob responded sternly. I'm sorry, Ron, but if you aren't available this weekend, I might have to let you go. I accepted this with a sad heart, hoping it would not harm our relationship. I said that I wanted to build my business, spend more time with my children, and save for their education. I'll clear out my locker later. Bob seemed sad as he inquired about my company, its location, and the services it provides. I informed him that I had established a store on my father-in-law's property, and detailed the equipment and services I offered, including auto body repair, grab a coffee and then return. Bob suggested, grabbing for his phone, and disregarding the coffee while I packed my stuff for a hard period ahead. With my work gone, my children would have to switch to Chris Health coverage, because I had forgotten about her. Nonetheless, I remained hopeful about my company's possibilities. When Bob spotted me, he summoned me to his office with a suggestion. I have an offer for you, Ron, he exclaimed excitedly. Work this weekend and make up for any customer discontent. I hesitated, not wanting to disappoint my customers. Wait, Bob interrupted, presenting an independent contractor agreement. We need you this weekend. Plus, if you can delay your clients while passing their inspection, we'll hire you for body work. Shocked, I accepted the agreement. Following that weekend, I largely ran my firm full-time, while occasionally assisting the dealership. Sam joined me part-time while Mary handled my accounts. My profits exceeded what I made at the dealership. However, my marriage remained rocky. After our fourth counseling session, I was ready to terminate it. I feel distant from Chris' activities. Despite the grief, I am less concerned in forming a new relationship. In our fifth session, I decided to be more proactive. I hoped that if I firmly reprimanded Chrissy, she would decide to end these ineffective sessions. I chose to confront her with the most hurtful comments she had made about me, alleging that I was simply too repulsive to appeal to another lady. When asked whether I had anything to say, I addressed Chrissy specifically. Chrissy, I have determined that you are not just entirely self-centered, but also truly cruel. I conveyed my bitterness. How could you? The woman who claims to love me sees me as an unattractive, middle-aged man who no woman would want. You've hurt me so badly that I don't think I'll be able to recover. God, Ron, I'm so sorry, she cried. I sincerely regret seeing that. If I could, I would undo it. I love you. Just not enough to abandon my boyfriend and keep my secrets to myself. You'll need it more than I do. Eventually, the counselor wrapped up the session and set her some assignments to do before our next meeting. I was not looking forward to it, because I had grown to regard these sessions as completely pointless. The job was to react to a series of questions, some of which I recognized, such as a relationship with her parents in her sexual intimacy. Others, such as my preferred food and drink, and the type of car I drove, appeared inconsequential. However, one question prompted me to halt and consider. What would be the one change I would make? After that session, I considered this question. What decided to set aside the questionnaire? The next day, I wrote that I wished I had been a more attentive spouse so that my wife had not fallen out of love with me. We submitted our comments at the next meeting. But the counselor did not even look at them. Instead, she asked if we had any questions or themes we wanted to discuss. "I want to ask Christy a question," I replied instantly. The counselor gave me the okay. And I faced my soon-to-be ex-wife, Chris. "It is clear that we are not making any progress in these sessions. You've made it clear that you're not going to leave your friend Bruce Hartman, which rules out any potential of us getting back together. Why don't we just finish this and go ahead with the divorce?" "How did you learn his name?" Christy asked, surprised. "When did you initially come to see the kids?" "I took note of his car's license plate. After that, figuring out his name was simple. But it is now irrelevant. I have no desire for vengeance or even to talk with him. I'm past caring. I simply want to go on," I explained. Christy's eyes were filled with tremendous anguish, the likes of which I had rarely witnessed. It pains me to see her like way. And a part of me wanted to console her. But I knew that would not fix anything. So I proceeded. "I understand your lawyer has been disappointed with the settlement offered thus far. As a result, I've asked my lawyer to recommend some alternatives. I'm willing to give you extra time with the kids and pay $1,000 each month in alimony for 3 years. I am determined to complete this regardless of the cost," I said, observing Christy. All I could think about was her profound anguish. She had plainly decided not to discontinue her connection. And I couldn't or didn't want to tolerate my wife being intimate with another man. At that point, it became evident to me that I wanted leave, so I advocated for an end to the sham. "I understand that what you said about me was somewhat accurate. It stung a lot when you mentioned it. And I told you that I never believed I'd be able to get over it. However, as time passes, I've come to know that I'm going on nonetheless, as is obvious. I've made an attempt to improve myself. I don't think I'm the guy you had such low regard for when you started seeing Bruce. I've also started dating again after a divorce. You are welcome to continue meeting your friend for as long as you like. But I believe it is time to cease this, if only to begin healing the bond with our children." I concluded. Chrissy burst into tears when she heard this. The counselor rushed out of the room, seeming as astonished as I was. She ultimately calmed down and expressed her desire to see Chrissy alone at the next meeting, followed by me alone for the final session. With a sorrowful heart, I consented. When Chrissy told me all of this, I was outraged and disgusted. But now, months later, I'm just fatigued. I can see the distress this situation has created. Not only me, but also Chrissy, her parents, and our children. I wished for it to end. Furthermore, my rage at Chrissy for having an intimate relationship with another guy had dissipated. By the end of my final session, "Ron, I admire your patience throughout these discussions. The ordeal has been quite difficult for you. After meeting with Chrissy the previous week, I feel I understand what happened to your wife while they sat on the edge of their seats. I hope to uncover why Chrissy decided to end her marriage. Do you recall the assignment I gave you?" she inquired. I simply nodded, having practically forgotten about it, and thought it was a minimal consequence in her coaching. "Your comments to a particular inquiry were intriguing." She continued to pull 2 sheets of paper from her file. "The question was, if you could change one thing, what would it be? Do you recall that?" I nodded. "You wished you had been a better spouse, so that your wife would have continued to love you." Chrissy grieved more harder than usual when she heard this. It took me some time to relax her. I wasn't sure how to react, so I just sat down. "Ron, your wife has never stopped loving you. She whispered quietly. So she's still with Bruce because she adores me so much. I answered sarcastically, to which she gave me a disapproving look before saying, Ron, what I uncovered about Chrissy was that she was going through a major midlife crisis as her children grew older. Chrissy sensed her life vanishing. She has always been, and I believe still is, a kind and sensitive person. Somehow she met Bruce, who sorely needed her. She misunderstood her desire to be young again for love, and Bruce's great yearning for forgiveness for his wife's death. That doesn't change anything, I objected. Is she still with Bruce? She said, actually, no, she is not, Ron. This was new to me, so why didn't Chrissy tell me? Deep down, I knew this would not change my opinion at this time. But it was critical to be informed of the whole reality. Bruce had left town. On the second day, I informed Chrissy that I intended to date others and proceed with the divorce, assuming she had already lost me. I considered her comments, but they did not change my decision. Too much had happened for reversal. My life was back on track and I planned to keep moving forward. It was out of the question to trust Chrissy again. Living in such a manner did not appeal to me. Above all, I hope the children may begin reuniting with their mother. Sally's scholastic performance had suffered dramatically since the beginning of this upheaval, and I was persuaded she held resentment toward her mother. Kay had grown depressed and withdrawn, engaging in poor behavior at school. This could be regarded the most devastating consequence of Chris' conduct. She was no longer the happy, carefree youngster among them. Ron seems to cope the best. He was not angry or depressed. However, any time his mother's name came up in conversation, his manner changed, and he frequently steered the conversation elsewhere. It's possible I'm mistaken, but his response may be more worrying than the two girls. It's difficult to say for sure. One more thing, Ron said as he pulled out another document. This was Chris' response to a question about changing one area of her life. She stated a desire to forget ever meeting Bruce Hartman after the divorce, as agreed. Christy visited the kids on Wednesdays and Fridays. I made sure we had dinner plans on Fridays before Chris arrived. Initially, our interactions were rigid and unpleasant, but we gradually began to share with the youngsters. One evening, Chris asked if she may spend the night. No, I replied, amused. The guest room isn't particularly comfy. It is advisable to return home the next time. Do not even fathom the thought of us being alone in the same room. The truth regarding Bruce Hartman was not completely accurate. His wife died in a car accident while rushing away in distress after discovering his infidelity. Why did he leave the town? It appears that it was the result of a severe assault he suffered near a neighborhood tavern. 5 cracked ribs, a shattered MEP, 5 missing teeth, and 2 serious traumas. I asked several pals for a favor and thought it would be useful. The assault assured that he would not be a threat to any woman, let alone find satisfaction in a relationship. Chrissy was able to re-establish a strained relationship with her children over time, namely with Sally and Kyle. Despite Chris's attempts, a perceptible schism existed between her and Ron. Surprisingly, Sally, not Ron, was the first to fully embrace their mother's return. Chrissy ultimately reunited with her parents. However, similar to her connection with Ron, a palpable frost lingered with her father. Regardless, most Sundays, farmers dined there, much like a family, though we were not. Chrissy continually professed her regret for everything that had happened. Finally, I asked you to stop her apologies, emphasizing that forgiveness was out of the question. And that additional attempts were worthless. Furthermore, Chrissy, I have highlighted enough. That your behavior is immature. I have made my position known. There is no place for discussion, accept it or not. That is your decision. We will never reconcile, even in the most terrible conditions. 3 years later, I got remarried. Sally and her teacher are getting married. The circumstances behind our meeting and the subsequent events are stories for another time. What is crucial is that the children accept her into our family. Chrissy, on the other hand, must accept my decision to move on. Yet there is nothing else for me to do. The issue was resolved long ago. She must deal with it on her own. This is an emotional narrative that emphasizes the value of family relationships and loyalty during difficult times. The character's decisions and actions stimulate thought on the ideals that unite us and the inner power we can summon to overcome any adversity. Thank you for taking time to hear today's story. If you enjoyed this article, please like and subscribe. If you haven't already. If you have a story to relate regarding your or someone else's situation, please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.